And so, Dr. Rod, I want to jump on to what you mentioned about staff satisfaction or let's say team satisfaction is not just based around money. And money was actually, I remember when I first started coaching about 11 years ago, I saw a stat that, out of the top reasons of why people leave a job, money was actually lower on that list, lower in the top 10 than you would actually think. And it kind of leads us to our next point of talking about this, some research that I can't remember where, I think you referred me to it, or I think I found it and you said, yes, I know of that research. Was some research by Barna, and they're a research organization that do a lot of research around church and a lot of statistics around that. And what they found is that over half, 51% of pastors. Now, this is a United States study, but it's with my experience with pastors in Australia and in here in the Dominican Republic, I would say it's fairly consistent. And obviously, you as a pastor can echo this, Dr. Rod. That 50% of pastors say their number one reason or their number one concern in church is the fact that the younger generation, young adults are leaving the church in droves. It's this kind of like this, pandemic that we don't, that's kind of unspoken of, is that young adults are leaving churches across the world, and at least 34% said it was at least in their top three, not their number one, or their top concern. Now, going down, throughout all this research, it actually leads to the fact that they suggest that it's through a lack of leadership training, and that kind of well, yes, we would love to be the answer to that. To the solution to that problem, providing free leadership, faith-based leadership training. It's reassuring to know that what we've been called to and what we believe is the answer is actually being touted as the answer. But it's not just about the leadership training. Going back on your point earlier that employees, staff, followers are not necessarily there for the money. They're there because they want to feel appreciated. They're there because they want to be valued. And training and developing someone, investing in them, is one of the key ways you can make someone feel like they are valued, feel like that they're important to you. And obviously, you invest in them, especially when it comes around leadership development, especially in the church world. That's probably one of the key skill sets. And I think that is one of the greatest areas that you can develop in a church is leadership. There's plenty of opportunities for you to develop. But how are we actually developing, and what sort of training are we actually providing them, rather than just some leadership experience? But valuing these people and investing in them with leadership development, with us, you have to pay for it because it's for free. But not only does it make them feel valued, it benefits us as well as leaders if we're investing in the people that we're leading and seeing them growing and seeing, because if they're rising up as better leaders, then only naturally are they going to be performing better in their roles and everything like that. So, Dr. Rod, what's your thoughts around, going back to what you originally said around, people need to feel valued. It's not just about the money, and how can we do that?
Well, I agree with you. People do need to feel valued, and I think it's just part of how God has created us. God is a purposeful God, for example, so people do need to have a sense of purpose. We need to feel that we're competent. We need to feel that those around us do value us. And I think often people's experience in church is a little bit different to that. Now, Look, I'm not interested in just slicking off at churches. It's a tough gig, let me tell you. Being a pastor is a tough gig. Managing a church is a tough gig. Making sure you've got the financial resources to pay all your bills, that's pretty tough. Dealing with all the people issues that come up, that's pretty tough as well. So if you're listening to this and you're a pastor, I know how you feel. It's not easy. And I also think this problem that we're looking at, the young people leaving the church or not engaging in church, it's complicated. It's not just about leadership, and it's not just about leadership within the church. We know from the research that regardless of what kind of the quality, if you like, of Christian upbringing that young people have had, they tend to go through a stage of questioning their faith. That will happen, say, towards their late teens and into their mid-20s. And I know there used to be this idea, well, send your kids to a Christian university and this problem won't happen. Guess what? It happens there as well, because this is a stage that people go through. And I think what's happening is young people, and I applaud them for this, they're getting to the point where they're saying, I don't just want to inherit my parents' faith. I want to know if this thing is real. And so that's what starts the questions. That's one issue.
Yeah.
Another is that young people will often emulate the older people they see around them, including their parents. And if parents themselves are not well engaged with their local church, how can you expect the young ones to be engaged? The fact of the matter is that the research shows that for large churches in the United States, I don't know what it's like for small churches, but typically a person attends a large church once every 6 weeks. So they've become consumers. They're not investors. They're not investing in there.
Yep.
They're going to church when they don't have a better offer. That's essentially what it means. So young ones see this behaviour in the adults whom they see as leaders. The adults influence them. How can you expect them to show a high level of commitment? The third, and I think this is one that the church itself has a lot of influence over, is how often do you see internship schemes run where essentially the young people are used as slaves? They don't do work which is particularly intellectually stimulating. They get to do menial tasks. They don't have much agency in the sense that they don't get a lot of say over what it is they do. And I fail to see how these roles actually spiritually mature these young people. And certainly they don't really teach leadership. They might teach a few principles of followership by accident, and I think followership is something we need to teach as well. It's not all about leadership. There's a thing called followership as well. My local Christian bookshop, I did a study, I did a bit of research one day. There were over 400 books on leadership, and I found 2 that you might loosely classify as books on followership. So, we've got to sort that balance out. But I don't think we are genuinely providing leadership development for young people in the churches. But that's not that won't be the solution in its entirety, young people leaving the church.
No, I think the challenge, and just on your point, like once again, we're not bashing churches, they're not developing it. It's because we're all called for different purposes, and you're a local pastor and you're called to lead your church, not to be a leadership trainer, leadership coach. You're called to pastor, or some are called to preach, some are called to be evangelists, some are called, we're all called to different things, and that's why we want to offer this program for free and partner with churches and everything like that, is because let us do what we've been called to do, and we release you to do what you've been called to do. Right. But it's not. You're right. It's not. Well, yes, we lead toward the leadership development because that's our kind of arena. It goes back to the fact that actually you were on the point of the young adults are leaving church because they're on a discovery. They are hungry, and I believe that young adults nowadays. I mean, you look through all the generations, and all young adults have always been in search of something, in search of good, and like you see the hippie movement, and through all the generations, every generation has had their go of like discovery and trying to do good and everything like that. But I think that there's a little bit more intention with the young adults of nowadays, that if we're not showing them where their purpose is and where their value is, and help them discover what their life is within the church context and within, or not just within the church context, but what their life is and what their purpose is out in the world and their contribution to the world. They're going to go searching for that elsewhere, and they're going to be attracted to places that feed a void that they have, right? Because, like it comes back to that thing of what we're saying is the people we're leading need to feel valued, need to feel encouraged. And if there's a void, if there's something unfulfilled in them, then they're going to go pursuing that somewhere else, whether they're an employee, whether it's a church member, whatever it may be, whether it be your children that you're trying to lead. If there's a void, they're going to go and try to search to fill it. So how do we make sure that we are providing for the needs of those people we're leading, Dr. Rod?
Look, if I knew the answer, I'm sure I'd have a church of 10,000 people. And, 7,000 of them will be under 25 years of age.
Yes.
It's a difficult thing. And look, I know that a lot of evangelical Pentecostal churches, what they try to do is to match the culture of the church somewhat with the cultures that are drawing these young people. And I actually don't think that's a really bad strategy.
Yeah.
Often churches are criticised because of the lights, the loud music, and lights, smoke machines and loud music. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that. I think the mistake that we sometimes make is that we leave it there.
Yes,
so we're not
agreed.
Leadership, helping people find purpose and discover their leadership qualities and so on, that's really part of discipleship.
Yeah.
And there has been some research, I'm not sure whether it was the Barna organisation or someone else, but there's some research that suggests that one of the issues is that young people are not actually putting roots down in their local church and in their faith.
Yes.
In other words, they're getting their theology from the lyrics of the songs that they sing in church. And most of the lyrics today, and again, I love a lot of this music. I'm a sound guy. I've done sound in church for a long time, and I keep trying to talk people in. We need to have a 100 decibel service.
Yes, I love it.
The music's loud and there's lots of lights, and I love it.
Yeah.
Where you've got this bass beating out. I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great. But the problem is, though, that's in a sense an attractant.
Yeah.
That in itself is not developing people. It's not
Yes.
That in itself is not helping young people discover purpose. It's not helping young people develop their skills as influencers and understanding the importance in leadership of empowering those around them. And they don't always see that modelled either. I'll tell you why. Because they're pastors, they're youth pastors and senior pastors and so on. I haven't come along to you and gain some of the wisdom that you have. And, of course, as you know, one of the reasons why I'm involved with your organisation is that I believe God has given you something which the church needs. God wants to get it out into the church. So I've got no problem at all, really, with what many criticise as sort of bringing that outside culture into the church. I don't have a particular issue with that. But I do think that we've really got to work on this whole issue of helping young people discover their purpose and also of helping them come to grips with those really important keys to leadership of influence and empowerment. And just briefly, one of the other things is, generally speaking, in the church, we focus on what are called the trait approach to leadership. In other words, it's personal characteristics and behaviours. There is actually more to understanding leadership than just those areas. So it's not just whether or not I'm, charismatic. People like to follow me, than the life of the party, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot more to leadership than that. For example, we do need to be very sensitive to circumstances. And so under certain environments, under certain circumstances, we need to be more of a kind of leader, if you might say, emulating the military style in the middle of a battle. That's very, very different to leadership, where what we're trying to do is, say, develop vision and move people towards, say, changing social conditions in our local community and so on. So we need to help people become sensitive to that as well. But, all of these issues that we're talking about today, you and I, we could spend a day or longer talking about each one of them and still only be scratching the surface.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I think you kind of touched on something that then kind of leads us into our next point. But I suppose this whole issue of the young adults, exiting the church in this mass exodus, so to speak, it comes back to one of the leadership principles is let's invest in the people that we want to raise up. If we want to keep those people around us that we're leading and want to attract other people, because wouldn't you think that if you want to lead people, that if you're investing in the people that you're leading, don't you think that other people would then come and be attracted to you because they want someone to be invested? People want to be invested in. People are hungry for someone to see value in them. They're searching for it, and they're searching in other places. Why not allow it to be us as leaders to be able to invest in those people to help them grow? Hey, you just watched an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you'd like to see the full episodes, check out our YouTube channel and consider subscribing.